The moment the front door closed behind my sister and her husband, my entire body went cold. I was standing in Clara's living room in Asheville, North Carolina, watching their car pull away, when I turned toward my niece. Mila, the child everyone believed had been mute for years, wasn't reaching for her tablet or avoiding eye contact. She was staring straight at me. Then she spoke, clear, calm, terrified. "Aunt Natalie," she said, "don't drink the tea Mom made. She's planning something bad." In that instant, I realized the silence, the diagnosis, and even my sister's love were all part of a lie that had been carefully built for years. And if I took a single sip, I might not live long enough to uncover the truth. I stood there frozen, the mug warm against my palms, staring at Mila like the room had slipped sideways. For a heartbeat, I thought my mind had finally cracked under stress, that I'd imagined it. But she didn't look confused or frightened by what she'd said. She looked resolved, like someone who had crossed a line she could never uncross. "Mila," I said carefully, "what did you say, sweetheart?" Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, then back to me. She lowered her voice, but her words didn't shake. "Don't drink the tea. Mom made it this morning. She said it would make you sick." The mug suddenly felt wrong in my hands. Too heavy, too important. I set it down on the coffee table as gently as if it might explode. "You can talk?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes." My heart slammed so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Since when?" "Since always." The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing. Mila, my quiet niece who communicated through nods, pictures, and a text-to-speech app, had just spoken in a clear, steady voice. No struggle, no delay, nothing like the condition Clara had explained to doctors, teachers, and family members for years. I crouched in front of her, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Okay, I need you to tell me everything. But first, are your parents gone?" "Yes," she said. "They're driving to Raleigh." "Not the airport." That detail landed harder than the rest. "Why are they going to Raleigh?" I asked. Mila hesitated, her hands twisted together. "They said they were flying, but last night Mom told Dad they'd drive instead. She said it was safer." "Safer for who?" I swallowed. "And the tea?" "She made it after dinner," Mila said. "She said you'd drink it because you trust her." A cold wave rolled through me. Trust. That word had always defined my relationship with my older sister. Clara had been the organized one, the capable one, the one who handled things when life got messy. I reached out and took Mila's hands. They were warm, steady. "Why are you telling me this now?" Her lip trembled just slightly. "Because she said today was the day, and because I don't want you to get hurt." Something cracked open in my chest. "Mila," I said gently, "why did everyone think you couldn't talk?" Her shoulders lifted in a small shrug. "Mom said I shouldn't." The words hit me like a slap. "Why?" "She said my voice caused problems." Mila's gaze dropped to the floor. "When I was little, I heard her on the phone. She didn't know I was there. She said your name and money, and that once you were out of the way, everything would be easier." My blood ran cold. "I didn't know what out of the way meant," Mila continued. "So I asked her the next day. She got really mad." My hands tightened around hers. "What happened?" She grabbed my arms and told me if I ever talked about anything I heard, something bad would happen to you. Mila's voice wavered for the first time. She said if I loved you, I'd stay quiet. I pulled her into my arms before I could stop myself. She was small, light, and trembling now that the words were finally out. "You did nothing wrong," I whispered. "Nothing." She nodded against my shoulder, breathing unevenly. I looked past her toward the kitchen, where the tea sat waiting. Pale, harmless looking, a gift, a lie. I stood slowly, keeping Mila close. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said. "You are safe with me. I'm not drinking that tea, and we're not telling your mom that you can talk. Not yet." Her head lifted. "Why not?" "Because she thinks she's in control," I said quietly. "And right now, we need her to keep thinking that." Mila considered this, then nodded. "Okay." I moved the mug to the sink and poured it out, watching the liquid disappear down the drain. Then I rinsed the mug, filled it with water, and placed it back where it had been. "Are you pretending?" Mila asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm going to pretend I drank it, and I'm going to pretend I'm sick." Her eyes widened. "Like a secret plan?" "Exactly like a secret plan." For the first time since she'd spoken, Mila smiled. Just a little. I checked my phone. No messages yet. Clara would expect one soon, something casual, something obedient. I typed slowly, choosing every word. "Tea was delicious. Thanks again for everything. Have a great trip." The reply came a minute later. "Aw, glad you liked it. Rest up." I stared at the screen. She believed it. I set the phone down and looked at my niece, the child who had given up her voice to protect me, and found it again just in time. Whatever Clara thought she was about to take from me, she had already lost something far more valuable, and she didn't even know it yet. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps this space grow and brings you more quiet stories like this. Thank you for listening. I didn't let Mila out of my sight after that. I closed the curtains, locked the front door, and turned the house quiet in the way you do when you're suddenly aware of how fragile things are. Mila followed me from room to room, not clinging, just present, like she was afraid that if she looked away, I might disappear. "Do you want to sit?" I asked her. She nodded and we curled up on the couch together. The house felt too big without Clara and Ethan's voices filling it, like a stage after the actors have left but the lights are still on. "Mila," I said gently, "I need you to tell me exactly what else you heard, even if it feels small." She thought for a moment. "Mom talks a lot when she thinks I'm not listening." That sentence alone explained more than she probably realized. "She said once you were sick, you wouldn't be able to stop anything," Mila continued. "She said the lawyer in Raleigh doesn't know you, and that she practiced your signature so it looks right." My stomach dropped. "Did she say when?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Mila said. "She said tomorrow everything would finally be hers." Tomorrow. I felt fear rise up sharp and fast, but underneath it was something steadier. Focus. Numbers had always calmed me, patterns, timelines, logic. I needed that part of my brain now. "Okay," I said quietly. "Then here's what we're going to do." Mila straightened, listening closely. "First, you stay with me at all times. You don't answer the door, you don't talk to anyone unless I'm there. Second, we don't tell your mom anything has changed. She still thinks you can't talk, and she still thinks I drank the tea." Mila nodded. "I can pretend." I managed a small smile. "You've had a lot of practice." She didn't smile back. "I don't want to pretend forever." "You won't," I promised. "I swear." I stood and walked into the kitchen, my pulse pounding again as I opened the cabinet under the sink. I grabbed a clean container and poured a small amount of the tea from the thermos before rinsing it out completely and refilling it with water. Evidence. I didn't know yet who would test it, but I knew better than to destroy it. When I turned back, Mila was watching me closely. "You're not scared," she said. I hesitated. "I am," I admitted, "but I'm more determined than scared." That seemed to satisfy her. The next call I made was to Hannah Lewis. Hannah had been my friend since college, the kind who showed up without asking questions and stayed until the problem was solved. She worked in healthcare now, understood protocols, understood urgency. "Hannah," I said when she answered, "I need you to come to Clara's house, now." There was a pause. "Natalie, are you okay?" "I will be," I said, "but I need help making sure." She didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." While we waited, Mila tugged on my sleeve. "There's more," she said. She led me down the hallway to Clara's home office, a room I'd rarely entered. Everything was immaculate. Too immaculate. Files lined up perfectly. Desk clear except for a single laptop and a small drawer with a digital lock. "I know the code," Mila said. "How?" I asked. "She types it when she thinks I'm not paying attention." Of course she did. Mila punched in 4 numbers. The drawer slid open. Inside were folders, bank statements, forms. So many forms. My name stared back at me from page after page, my signature copied just well enough to fool someone who wasn't looking closely. But I would have noticed. I always did. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Feeling okay? Make sure you rest. Stress isn't good for you." I stared at the message, then typed back. "Still a little dizzy, probably food poisoning. Going to lie down." Good, she replied. Take care of yourself. The casual cruelty of it made my hands shake. Hannah arrived 30 minutes later. She took one look at my face, then at Mila, then at the papers spread across the desk. Tell me, she said. So I did. When I finished, Hannah was very quiet. Then she said, You need a lawyer and you need the police, but not yet. I know, I said. I need proof. Hannah nodded. I can get the tea tested tonight. Mila spoke up. It won't kill her, she said softly. Mom said she's too smart for that. Hannah's jaw tightened. That doesn't make it better. No, I agreed. It makes it calculated. That night, after Hannah left with the sample, I tucked Mila into bed in the guest room. You can sleep, I told her. I'm right here. She looked at me seriously. You believe me? Yes, I said without hesitation. I always will. She closed her eyes. I stayed awake long after, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet house. Clara thought tomorrow was the day everything would finally go her way. She had no idea that tomorrow was the day her entire plan would begin to collapse. Morning came too quietly, the kind of quiet that feels staged, like the world is holding its breath. I woke before my alarm, heart already racing, and lay there listening, to the hum of the refrigerator, to the distant sound of traffic outside, to the steady breathing coming from the guest room down the hall. Mila was asleep. That mattered. I slipped out of bed and checked my phone. No new messages from Clara. That somehow was worse than a dozen. I made coffee I barely touched and sat at the kitchen table, spreading out the documents we'd found in the drawer. The pattern was unmistakable now that I wasn't afraid to see it. Withdrawals under reporting limits, dates aligned with times Clara knew I'd be busy or traveling, notes in her handwriting describing me as overwhelmed, emotionally unstable, incapable of managing finances. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was preparing to erase me. My phone buzzed. How are you feeling this morning? Clara wrote. I stared at the screen, forcing my hands to steady before replying. Worse. Barely slept. Might go to urgent care later. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Poor thing, she replied. I knew you'd push yourself too hard. Don't worry about anything here. Focus on getting better. I set the phone face down, nausea rising, not from any tea, but from the ease with which she lied. Mila appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes. Is today tomorrow? She asked quietly. Yes, I said, but remember, nothing happens unless we let it. She nodded and padded over, climbing into the chair beside me. She glanced at the papers, then looked up at me. You look like you're thinking very hard. I am, I said, but that's a good thing. She watched me for a second. I'm not scared anymore, she said. That nearly undid me. Hannah called just after 9. I have results, she said. Her voice was calm but tight. The tea was laced with a sedative and a strong laxative, non-lethal but absolutely enough to put you in the hospital for a couple of days. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Natalie, she added, this is serious. You need to escalate. I know, I said. I'm calling someone now. Mark Donovan answered on the first ring. Natalie Pierce, he said. This better be important. It is, I replied, and I need you to listen. Mark had been my friend since college. Sharp, relentless, and now a state prosecutor. I trusted him with my life. After everything Mila had told me, that trust felt heavier than ever. I told him everything, the tea, the forged signatures, the drive to Raleigh, the child silenced for years. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long moment. This crosses into multiple crimes, he said finally. Fraud, forgery, attempted poisoning, child abuse, and because she's moving money across state lines, federal interest. What do? I asked. You don't confront her, Mark said firmly. You keep pretending you're sick. You let her walk straight into the trap she built for herself. My stomach tightened. And Mila? She stays with you, and we get a child advocate involved immediately. Her statement matters. I looked at my niece sitting quietly at the table, swinging her legs. She's ready, I said. I believe that, Mark replied. I'll coordinate with local police and Raleigh authorities. The lawyer she's meeting, does he know what's really happening? I don't think so, I said. Good, Mark said. Then he'll cooperate. After the call ended, the house felt charged, like every surface was humming. Mila looked at me. Are you going to pretend to be sick again? Yes, I said, just for today. She nodded solemnly. I can help. At noon, I called Clara. I let my voice shake this time. Let it crack. Clara, I whispered, I think something's really wrong. I can't stop shaking. Her concern clicked into place instantly. Polished. Practiced. Oh no, did you go to the doctor? Not yet, I said. I didn't want to scare you. You should, she said quickly. Get checked out. I'll call later. She didn't ask which hospital. She didn't ask to speak to Mila. When the call ended, Mila looked up at me. She didn't ask about me, she said quietly. No, I replied. She didn't. By late afternoon, Mark texted, They're in Raleigh. Lawyer confirmed meeting time. Everything's set. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Clara thought she was hours away from winning. She didn't know that every lie she'd told, every signature she'd forged, every threat she'd whispered to a frightened child was about to be laid bare. I reached across the table and squeezed Mila's hand. Whatever happens next, I said, you did the bravest thing anyone could do. She squeezed back. So did you. Outside, the sky darkened with an approaching storm. And somewhere on a highway headed toward Raleigh, my sister was driving straight toward the truth, whether she was ready for it or not. The rain started just after dusk. Not a storm, just a steady, soaking kind of rain that blurred the world outside the windows and made everything feel slower, heavier. I left the lights low and kept the television on without sound, more for the illusion of normalcy than anything else. Mila sat beside me on the couch, legs tucked under her. Echo, borrowed from Hannah for the night, curled at her feet like he understood his job was to stay. Mark texted again just after 8. Meeting confirmed for 10:15 a.m. Lawyer cooperating. Police will be present but not visible. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a single word. Understood. Tomorrow morning, Clara would walk into a room believing she was about to finish what she'd started. By tomorrow afternoon, everything would be different. I turned to Mila. Tomorrow might feel strange, I said carefully. There may be a lot of adults asking questions. She nodded. I can answer them. I know you can, I said. But you only answer what you're comfortable answering. You're in control. That seemed to matter to her. She relaxed slightly, leaning back against the couch. Will she be mad? She asked after a moment. I didn't lie. She might be. Mila thought about that. She's been mad for a long time, she said quietly. I'm tired of being scared of it. So was I. That night, sleep came in fragments. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed conversations I'd ignored over the years, little comments Clara made about responsibility, about how I'd never really needed the money, about how hard her life was compared to mine. I saw them clearly now, each one a thread in a net she'd been tightening slowly. At 6 in the morning, my phone buzzed. How are you feeling today? Clara asked. I took a breath and typed back, Not good. Going to the hospital. I'm really scared. The reply came almost immediately. Oh no, that's awful. Try to rest. We'll talk later. That was it. No offer to come home. No questions. No concern about Mila. I handed the phone to Mark when he called minutes later. She's committed, he said after listening. She's not backing out. By 9, everything was set. Mila had spoken with a child advocate over video. Gentle questions, careful pauses. She'd answered steadily, her voice soft but firm. When it was over, she looked relieved. It feels better when it's out, she said. I hugged her tight. I'm proud of you. At 10 sharp, Mark sent the video link. I hesitated for just a second before tapping it. The screen filled with the interior of a law office conference room in Raleigh. Polished table, neutral walls. A calm, professional space designed to make big decisions feel routine. Clara walked in first. She looked perfect. Hair smooth, blazer pressed, expression carefully neutral. Ethan followed a step behind, eyes darting, shoulders tight. He looked like a man bracing for impact. They sat. The lawyer greeted them politely, then gestured toward the 2 other people already in the room. Clara frowned. I thought this was a private meeting. It is, the lawyer said evenly. These are investigators. The shift was instant. Clara's posture stiffened. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction before the mask slid back into place. Is there a problem? The first document hit the table. Then the second. Then the lab report. I watched my sister's face change in stages: confusion, irritation, calculation, and finally something colder, something cornered. "This is ridiculous," she said sharply. "My sister isn't well. She's always been unstable." The investigator didn't raise his voice. "We've spoken with her employer, her physician, and her financial institutions." Silence. "And we've reviewed the withdrawals," he continued. 14 months' worth, all unauthorized. Ethan shifted in his chair. Then came the recording. Mila's voice filled the room, steady, clear, unmistakable. "I stopped talking because my mom told me if I spoke, something bad would happen to my aunt." Clara stood abruptly. "That's impossible," she snapped. "She can't talk." The investigator looked at her calmly. "She always could." The handcuffs came out a moment later. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't cheer. I just sat there watching, my heart pounding, my hand wrapped tightly around Mila's. When the screen went dark, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. "It's over," Mila whispered. "Yes," I said, "it is." But even as I said it, I knew that what came next, the courts, the healing, the rebuilding, would take time. Still, for the first time since Mila had spoken in that living room, I felt something close to peace. Clara's lies had finally met the truth. And the truth, once spoken, was unstoppable. The courthouse in Buncombe County didn't look the way I'd imagined justice would. There were no grand columns or dramatic echoes, just beige walls, hard benches, and a judge who looked tired in the way only someone who has seen too many broken families can look. Still, when I walked in holding Mila's hand, it felt like the most important room I had ever entered. Mila wore a simple blue dress she'd picked out herself. Nothing fancy. She said she wanted to look like herself. I sat beside her at the front table, aware of every small movement, every breath she took. Clara wasn't there. Her lawyer was. Ethan's too. He'd already signed papers agreeing to cooperate fully. He didn't look at us once. The judge reviewed the file slowly. Fraud, forgery, attempted poisoning, psychological abuse of a minor. Each charge felt unreal hearing it spoken out loud, like they belonged to someone else's life. But every word was ours. When the judge finally looked up, his gaze settled on Mila. "Miss Pierce," he said gently, "I understand you've recently begun speaking again after a long period of silence." Mila nodded. Her hand tightened around mine. "That took courage," he continued. "And today I'd like to hear from you, only if you're comfortable. Where would you like to live?" The room went very quiet. Mila stood. She was small, her feet barely touching the floor, but her voice didn't waver. "I want to live with my Aunt Natalie," she said. "She believed me, she listened, and she makes me feel safe." The judge smiled softly. "That's very clear." He didn't hesitate. "Emergency custody is granted to Natalie Pierce." I didn't realize I was crying until Mila hugged me and whispered, "We're okay now." Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Mila talked the entire walk to the car, about the judge's glasses, about how serious everyone looked, about how hungry she was. I listened to every word like it was proof that this was real. We didn't go back to Clara's house. We went home. My apartment wasn't big, but it was warm and familiar, filled with things Mila already knew. My books, my plants, the old couch she loved curling up on. She explored the spare room like it was brand new territory. "This one," she said decisively, "this will be mine." That night, we ate pizza on the floor and planned things that had never felt possible before. Shelves, posters, a reading corner by the window. "Purple?" I asked. She grinned, always. Therapy started the next week. Some days were easy. Some days were quiet again. Not the old silence of fear, but the kind that comes from processing too much all at once. I learned to sit with it instead of rushing to fill it. "You don't have to talk," I reminded her often. "I know," she'd say, "but I want to." Clara took a plea deal. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to see her mask crack again. The trust was frozen and audited. Most of the stolen money was recovered. I became sole trustee, not just for myself, but for Mila's future. I set up an education fund in her name, quietly, carefully. Some evenings, Mila talked herself to sleep, stories spilling out of her, unfiltered, joyful, strange. Other nights, she asked me to sit with her in silence. Both were okay. One morning, as we walked to school together, Mila slipped her hand into mine. "Aunt Natalie." "Yes?" "Thank you for believing me right away." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth." She smiled, and for the first time, it didn't feel fragile. It felt earned. Our life didn't become perfect overnight. Healing never works that way, but it became honest, safe, ours. And every time Mila chose to speak, or chose not to, I knew we were building something stronger than what had been taken from us. We were building a future where silence was no longer a weapon, just a choice. Life after the courtroom didn't feel dramatic. It felt careful. The kind of careful that comes from rebuilding something you don't want to break again. Mornings were slow. Evenings were predictable. Mila and I developed routines without talking about them. Walks to school, homework at the kitchen table, dinner cooked together even when it was just pasta and jarred sauce. Safety, I learned, is mostly repetition. The first week Mila started school again, she barely spoke when she got home. Not because she was afraid, but because she was tired. Her therapist had warned me about that, how finding your voice doesn't mean you're ready to use it all the time. So we sat together on the couch in comfortable silence, Echo stretched out between us, his tail thumping every time Mila absent-mindedly scratched behind his ears. "You don't have to tell me about your day," I said. "I know," she replied, "but I will later." And she did, always later, once she was ready. Some nights memories crept back in quietly, a smell, a phrase, a certain tone of voice from a stranger at the grocery store. When that happened, Mila would go still, her shoulders stiffening like she was bracing for something invisible. Those were the moments I learned not to rush. I'd sit beside her and say, "You're here, you're safe." Eventually, she'd nod. Sometimes she'd talk, sometimes she wouldn't. Either way, the moment passed. That was new, moments passing instead of trapping us. One afternoon, while we were organizing books on the shelves we'd finally installed, Mila paused with a paperback in her hands. "Do you think people can hear lies if they don't want to?" she asked. I considered the question. "I think some people hear them," I said slowly, "but convince themselves there's something else, because the truth would be harder." She nodded, absorbing that. "I don't want to do that." "You won't," I said. "You already know how to listen." A month later, Mila asked if she could join the school's reading circle. It met once a week after classes. Kids took turns reading aloud. "You don't have to," I reminded her. "I know," she said, "but I want to try." The day she came home after her first session, she dropped her backpack and smiled. A real, unguarded smile. "I read a whole page," she said, out loud. I felt my chest tighten. "How did it feel?" "Scary," she admitted, "and good." Both could exist. That mattered. Spring edged closer. The city softened. Windows opened. Light stayed longer. Mila grew louder in small ways, singing under her breath, narrating what she was doing, correcting Echo when he ignored her commands. "You have to listen," she told him seriously. "That's how families work." I laughed. He's learning. One evening, as we washed dishes together, Mila asked, "Do you ever feel bad for her?" I knew who she meant. I didn't answer right away. "I feel sad," I said finally, "but I don't feel guilty." She nodded. "Me neither." That answer felt right for both of us. Later that night, I found Mila sitting on her bed, looking at a piece of paper folded neatly in half. "What's that?" I asked. She hesitated. "A letter." "To who?" "To me," she said. "Later me." I sat beside her. "What does it say?" She smiled softly. That I survived, and that being quiet didn't mean I was weak. I swallowed. "Can I keep it safe for you?" She handed it to me. "Please." As I placed it in my desk drawer, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't just about protecting Mila anymore. It was about teaching her that her voice, whether spoken or written, loud or quiet, belonged to her alone. On a Saturday morning not long after, we made pancakes together. Mila stood on a chair, carefully measuring flour, narrating each step like she was hosting her own show. "And now," she declared, "we wait, because rushing ruins things." I smiled. "That might be the smartest thing you've said all week." She grinned. "I've learned a lot." So had I. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in small choices, repeated daily, listening, waiting, trusting. And every night when the apartment settled into quiet, I no longer wondered what that silence was hiding. It was simply peace, finally allowed to exist. By summer, the quiet in our apartment had changed again. It wasn't the careful quiet of recovery anymore. It was the comfortable kind, the background hum of a life being lived without constant vigilance. Windows stayed open. Mila left her bedroom door ajar. Echo claimed the coolest spot on the floor and refused to move. Mila grew braver in ways that didn't announce themselves. She raised her hand in class more often. She corrected teachers politely when they mispronounced her name. She argued, with logic and evidence, about bedtime being unfair on weekends. Each small act felt like a brick laid into a foundation that wasn't going anywhere. One afternoon, she came home unusually thoughtful. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, then paused. "Something." I waited. "There's a girl in my class," Mila said. "She doesn't talk much. People think she's weird." My chest tightened. "What do you think?" "I think she listens a lot," Mila replied, "like I used to." The next day, Mila asked if she could invite the girl over. "She doesn't talk much," Mila added quickly. "That's okay." It was more than okay. They spent the afternoon on the floor building a puzzle without saying much at all. Just two kids sharing space, occasionally exchanging smiles. When the girl left, she waved shyly at me. "Thank you," she whispered. Mila watched her go, then turned to me. "Sometimes people don't need questions," she said. "They just need room." I nodded. "You're right." Later that week, Rachel came by for dinner. She watched Mila chatter her way through dessert, telling a story that wandered through 3 unrelated topics before circling back to the beginning. "She's incredible," Rachel said quietly when Mila stepped away. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" I did, often, but the thought no longer scared me. "I think about how different they are," I said. "That's enough." That night, Mila asked a question I'd been waiting for. "Do you think Mom ever listens to herself?" she asked, brushing Echo's fur slowly. I chose my words carefully. "I think some people talk so much they can't hear anything else." She nodded. "I don't want to be like that." "You won't," I said. "You already know how to stop." As summer ended, Mila wrote a short piece for school titled "The Power of Quiet." Her teacher asked if she wanted to read it aloud at the assembly. Mila said yes. I sat in the back row, hands clenched together, heart racing like it was my own name about to be called. Mila stepped up to the microphone, took a breath, and began. She didn't rush. She spoke about listening, about how silence doesn't mean nothing is happening, about how sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is wait until they feel safe enough to speak. When she finished, the room was silent for a beat. Then the applause came. Mila scanned the crowd, found me, and smiled. That night, as we walked home under the fading light, Mila slipped her hand into mine. "I wasn't scared," she said. "I was ready." I squeezed her hand. "That's how you know." Fall arrived gently. Leaves gathered along the sidewalks. Mila started leaving notes on the fridge. Reminders, jokes, tiny observations about the world. Listening counts as helping. Echo understands more than he pretends. Quiet isn't empty. I kept everyone. On the anniversary of the day, she broke her silence. Mila didn't want a celebration. She wanted pancakes and a long walk by the river. So that's what we did. Halfway through the walk, she stopped and looked at the water. "I think I used to be afraid that if I talked, everything would fall apart," she said. "And now?" I asked. "Now I think things fall apart when no one listens." That felt like the truest thing either of us had said. That night, as Mila slept, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about the woman I used to be. The one who trusted too easily, who avoided conflict, who believed silence always meant peace. I understood her now. But I didn't need to be her anymore. Because in this home, with this child, silence wasn't something to fear or fill. It was something we could choose together. And when Mila spoke, the world listened, as it always should have. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a grocery flyer and a school notice about Picture Day. No return address. My name typed, perfectly centered. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and watched Mila pack her lunch, methodical, careful, narrating her choices out loud the way she always did now. Apple slices because crunch helps me think. Sandwich because I'm hungry. Cookie because life. I smiled and walked her to school, the envelope waiting where I'd left it. It wasn't until the apartment was quiet again that I opened it. Clara's handwriting. Tidy. Controlled. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. She wrote about time. How much of it she had now. How it changes the way you see things. She wrote about regret without naming what she regretted. About mistakes without owning them. She said she hoped someday we could talk like sisters again. She didn't mention Mila. That told me everything I needed to know. I folded the letter once, then again, and placed it in the back of a drawer beneath old warranties and instruction manuals. Things kept for reference, not for comfort. Some doors didn't need to be slammed to stay closed. That evening, Mila noticed my quiet. Good quiet or thinking quiet, she asked. Finished quiet, I said. She nodded, accepting that. A week later, Mila had her first school presentation. 5 minutes on any topic. She chose adaptation, how animals change when the world around them changes. She practiced in the living room, pacing, pausing, asking Echo if he thought the conclusion made sense. It does, I told her, but you don't have to convince anyone. I know, she said. I just want to explain. The day of the presentation, I sat in the back row, heart pounding like it was my turn at the microphone. Mila stood tall, paper steady in her hands. When she spoke, her voice didn't rush. It landed. Sometimes, she said, what keeps you safe at first can stop working later. Then you have to learn something new. The room was quiet when she finished. Then came the applause. In the car afterward, Mila stared out the window, thoughtful. I used to think being loud was dangerous, she said. Now I think being invisible is. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You don't have to be either. Summer settled in again. Long evenings, warm sidewalks. We adopted a dog in June, a scruffy mutt with ears too big for his head and a habit of sitting on your feet. Mila named him Echo, because he always comes back, she said. At night, she read aloud on the couch while Echo snored, his chest rising and falling in time with her voice. Sometimes she stumbled, sometimes she laughed and started again. I never corrected her unless she asked. Listening was still the point. One evening on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker on, Mila asked, "Do you think people can change if no one listens to them?" I considered it. I think listening helps, I said, but wanting to change matters more. She nodded. I want to keep listening. That's a good plan, I said. On the anniversary of the day she broke her silence, Mila asked to do something small, meaningful. We went to the library. She walked straight to the children's section and checked out a stack of books, stories about brave kids, found families, and voices that mattered. At the desk, the librarian smiled at her. You read a lot, she said. I talk a lot, too, Mila replied, proud. On the walk home, Mila slipped her hand into mine. Thank you for not making me talk when I wasn't ready, she said, and for believing me when I was. I squeezed her hand. Thank you for trusting me with your voice. That night, after Echo had curled up at the foot of her bed and Moila drifted off, I stood in the doorway longer than usual. The room hummed with ordinary sounds. Breathing, distant traffic, the quiet click of the heater. Silence now felt gentle. Some stories end with justice. Ours ended with something quieter and stronger. A child who learned that her voice mattered. An adult who learned that listening can change everything. And a home where silence wasn't a weapon or a warning, just the space between words, safe enough to rest in, ready for whatever came next. The first time Mila asked about the records, I knew we were entering a new phase. We were sitting at the kitchen table on a quiet Sunday afternoon, paperwork spread out between us. School forms, medical updates, the small, boring documents that quietly build a stable life. Mila flipped through them with curiosity, stopping at one page longer than the others. Why does it say minor child instead of my name? She asked. That's for privacy, I explained, so strangers can't find you. She considered that carefully. I like being protected, she said, but I also like being known. I smiled. Those don't cancel each other out. She nodded, satisfied, and kept sorting. That night, Mila asked for an envelope and a pen. She sat cross-legged on her bed, tongue pressed against her lip in concentration, writing slowly and deliberately. When she was done, she sealed it and handed it to me. "For later," she said. "Not now later, future later." I didn't ask what it said. "I'll keep it safe." School brought new challenges, group projects, class discussions, the unpredictable noise of other kids' emotions. Some days Mila came home energized, talking nonstop. Other days she was quieter, retreating inward not from fear, but from overload. On those days we didn't push. We made soup. We built puzzles. We sat side by side reading without speaking. Silence, when chosen, felt like rest instead of restraint. One afternoon, Mila came home with a flyer for a school assembly titled, "Speak Up." She frowned at it. "They make it sound like talking is the only brave thing," she said. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think listening should be brave too." She took out her markers and added a line at the bottom before returning it to her backpack. Listening is a choice. Her teacher later emailed me a photo of the flyer taped to the classroom wall. I saved it. In October, Mila had a nightmare for the first time in months. She didn't cry out. She just appeared in my doorway, small and silent, eyes wide. I lifted the blanket without a word, and she curled up beside me, shaking. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're here." "I know," she said softly. My body forgot for a second. We lay there until her breathing evened out. Trauma, her therapist had explained, doesn't announce itself. It slips in quietly. What matters is knowing it doesn't get to stay. The next morning, Mila made pancakes without being asked, misshapen, slightly burnt. She slid a plate toward me. "For being brave," she said. "For who?" I asked. She shrugged. "Both of us." Winter arrived early. Snow pressed against the balcony door, muting the city. Mila stood watching it fall, forehead against the glass. "It's very quiet," she said. "Yes," I agreed, "but not lonely." She smiled. In December, we went to a small holiday gathering. Rachel, a few friends, people who knew pieces of our story without ever demanding the whole thing. Mila moved easily through the room, laughing, choosing when to speak and when to observe. "She's remarkable," Rachel murmured to me. "She always was," I replied. "People just didn't listen." Later, walking home under string lights, Mila kicked at the snowbanks. "Do you think people change?" she asked. "Some do," I said. "Some don't." She nodded. "I think I did." I stopped walking and looked at her. "You didn't change," I said. "You grew." That felt right to her. On New Year's Eve, Mila stayed up until midnight for the first time. Fireworks burst above the buildings, echo barking at every explosion. When the clock struck 12, Mila closed her eyes. "What did you wish for?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "That quiet never feels scary again." I wrapped an arm around her. I think that wish already came true. As the year turned, I realized something had shifted in me too. I no longer listened for danger in every silence. I no longer scanned rooms for what might go wrong. I listened for joy, for laughter drifting from Mila's room, for the soft thump of Echo's tail, for the ordinary sounds of a life no longer shaped by fear. Some stories don't end with a single moment of victory. They keep unfolding slowly, gently, every time someone chooses to listen and every time someone feels safe enough to speak. And ours was still being written. The first time Mila spoke up for someone else, I wasn't there to see it. I found out later that afternoon when her teacher called and asked if we could talk for a few minutes. My stomach tightened the way it always did when school and phone calls mixed, but her tone was warm, almost impressed. "There was an incident in class today," she said. "Nothing serious, but I wanted you to know how Mila handled it." I leaned against the kitchen counter, listening. "There's a new student," the teacher continued, very quiet. Another child made a comment about it. Before I could intervene, Mila raised her hand. I closed my eyes for a second. What did she say? She said, "Sometimes people are quiet because they're thinking, and sometimes because they're scared. Either way, we don't make fun of it." The words settled into me slowly, like something finding its proper place. She wasn't upset, the teacher added. She wasn't loud, she was calm, and the room listened. When I told Mila about it that evening, she shrugged like it was nothing. "He looked how I used to feel," she said, so I said something. I sat down beside her. That was brave. She thought about it. It didn't feel scary, she said. It felt right. That was when I understood how far she'd come. Winter loosened its grip, and spring arrived quietly. The city softened again. Mila shot up another inch, her sleeves suddenly too short, her opinions growing just as fast. She left notes around the apartment, on the fridge, on my desk, tucked into books. Listening counts. Echo understands more than he admits. Quiet doesn't mean empty. I kept everyone. One Saturday afternoon, we opened the drawer where I'd kept her letter, the one she'd written to her future self months ago. She held it for a long moment before opening it. She read silently, then folded it back up. "What did it say?" I asked. She smiled. That I survived, and that one day I'd help someone else feel safe. I reached out and brushed her hair back. "You already have." She tucked the letter under her pillow. "Then I'll keep going." That night, we sat on the balcony with mugs of hot chocolate. Echo curled between us, the city lights flickering on one by one. "Aunt Natalie?" Mila asked. "Yes? Do you think silence can be good?" I didn't answer right away. "Yes," I said finally. "When it's chosen, when it's safe." She nodded, satisfied. Later, as I watched her sleep, I thought about how close everything had come to ending before it truly began. How easily her voice could have stayed buried. How easily I could have ignored that first warning. I didn't blame myself anymore. I understood now that listening is a skill, one that has to be learned, practiced, protected. On the anniversary of the day Mila broke her silence, we didn't do anything special. No pancakes, no ceremonies. We volunteered at the local library's reading hour for kids who were shy, anxious, or new to the language. Mila sat cross-legged on the rug with a book in her lap. When it was her turn, she read slowly, clearly, pausing when a younger child raised a hand. No rush, no pressure, just space. On the walk home, she slipped her hand into mine. "I like helping like that," she said. "It feels quiet and loud at the same time." I smiled. "That's because it matters." That night, after the lights were off and the apartment settled into its familiar hush, Mila called out softly from her room. "Aunt Natalie?" "Yes?" "Thank you for listening, even before I talked." I stood in the doorway, letting the moment settle. "Always," I said. "That will never change." As I closed her door, I felt a certainty I hadn't known before. Our story was never really about danger or money or even betrayal. It was about a child who waited for someone safe enough to hear her, and an adult who finally learned that listening, real listening, can change the course of a life. Some stories end with justice. Ours ended with something quieter and far more lasting. A voice that was no longer afraid. A silence that no longer hid harm. And a future built, word by word, on trust.